Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar today. I am Gülşen Taşkın from Istanbul Technical University in Turkey, and I'm also the chair of IEEE GRSS Turkey chapter. This is going to be our first webinar activity. I would like to thank IEEE GRSS for hosting this webinar. Today we're going to have Dr. Zhang, who is an assistant professor in biological systems engineering and electrical and computer engineering at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA. She's going to give us a presentation of about 45 minutes with the title of Alfalfa Yield Prediction using UAV-based Hyperspectral Imagery and Ensemble Learning. I would like to thank our speaker, Dr. Zhou, on behalf of the Turkey chapter for accepting our invitation. Before we getting into that, I would like to remind you that you can ask your questions using the Q&A part. We will get back to these questions after the presentation. With that, I believe everyone is online and we're ready to go. So I will hand it over to Dr. Zhou to kick off the webinar. Zhou, ready? Let me stop my share. Okay.
You can stop your sharing, then I can.
Okay.
So can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Just turn it to full screen.
Is it good?
Actually, I can see the other part of your, there's a black.
Oh.
Okay. So it would be better if you can stretch out on the whole screen. I don't know how you can do that, but. Display settings.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. And I'm Zhou. I'm an assistant professor in biological system engineering at UW-Madison. And my research mainly focuses on using the remote sensing and machine learning techniques for the digital agriculture applications. If you are interested in more details about my research, please visit this website. And thank you for the invitation. I really feel happy to have this chance to present my work to you today. So today I will be mainly talking about the work we have been recently working on about using the hyperspectral imagery and ensemble learning for alfalfa yield prediction. So before getting started, I would like to introduce more about my research work background. So one of my research mainly focuses on using this multi-source remote sensing data. The data can come from different sensors and of course can come from different platforms. So we see here, we have this satellite imagery, airborne imagery, and they tend to cover like large scale areas. So you can do a large scale monitoring. And also regarding the finer scale, say if you're interested in working on a farm, field level, pretty small scale, but we need to more high resolution data, precise data, then we can use this autonomous mobile like the recently very popular, the drone has really like an emerging technique in the precision ag area. Also, we can use some ground robotics. So this platform tend to be more flexible because we can control when to fly and which area we can collect data. And also it can give us higher spatial and temporal resolutions. And after collecting this type of data, our group intend to develop the machine learning computational algorithm models to interpret such data and then develop models to a variety of different agriculture applications. I show two examples here, and one is like a plant phenotyping. I will talk more about, give more background about what's phenotyping. And then another is about the resource management. Say we can monitor how the plant grows on the farm, then we can apply the like nitrogen, water, all these farm resources inputs at the right time and also at the right place. Then we can protect our environment by using less nitrogen and save the farm cost, and then help promote the agricultural sustainability. Okay. So one of my research part focus a lot on this plant phenotyping, and remote sensing and machine learning can play a critical role in this type of work. So what's plant phenotyping? Now, plant phenotyping is, we know in crop breeding, people in the crop breeding area, genetic area, they tend to breed a new crop variety, and such new crops either can be like disease resistant, more adaptive to the climate change, or can generate more yield. So we can, at the end, we just can increase the crop production and productivity. However, in the crop breeding area, people tend to modify the genetics about a particular variety, then they can change it. The genotyping part, which is related to DNA sequencing, that is well developed right now. So the genotype data can be easily and quickly accessed. However, at the meantime, we want to connect such genotype, and we want to plant this genotype, the new variety plants into the field and see how it really looks like. We call this phenotypes. Collecting the phenotype data is still a bottleneck in this crop breeding area. We can easily get the genotype data, but very difficult to acquire such phenotype data. Typically, what people do, traditional phenotyping is, for example, like the plant height, leaf chlorophyll content, or biomass yield, all these things. As you see in these pictures, people go to the field, send a bunch of people, crew go to the field and to collect such data manually. And usually in one field, they have thousands of plots. Each plot represents for one variety. So you want to have the field trials for these different varieties. Then it means you have to take these measurements for all these plots. It will take very, very long time and spends a lot of, and it's expensive, laborious, and very inconvenient. And then it really limits the advancement of the crop breeding. To resolve this issue, lately the high throughput plant phenotyping has become very popular. It can use these imaging techniques. We can mount different types of sensors on different platforms, like we can put the sensors on the ground wheel robotic and the UAV platform. And regarding the sensor, we can also use different types of sensors. Then we can collect data from different aspects. For example, like the digital camera, it can give us the RGB imagery and with very high resolution, spatial resolution. And we can also use the hyperspectral camera, and because it can give us the detailed spectral information that really relates to the plant growth. And also thermal camera can give us the temperature about the plants. Let's say if the plant is under stress, let's say water stress, for example, and then the temperature tends to become higher. By measuring the such temperature, you can really detect the growing status of the plant. And the LiDAR data is mainly used for extracting the plant 3D structure. So we want to see the plant height and basically the geometric structure, like the plants. Then we can use this LiDAR point clouds. Then by collecting such data, the next thing we would like to do is to process this multi-source big remote sensing data, and then extract the informative features from such multi-source remote sensing data. For example, we can develop a model to estimate leaf area index, chlorophyll content, biomass, yield, height, nitrogen, water content, etc. All these are like phenotypic data. We call them like plant phenotype data. Without, as you see in the previous slide, without this advanced technology, we have to manually measure all this. That's really laborious. Then after we getting this phenotype data, we can combine this phenotype data with the genetic data and then do some genetic analysis to help assist with the variety selection, crop breeding. And this is a typical workflow about the high throughput phenotyping and genotyping. Here are the commonly used sensors we can put on these different platforms. One is this RGB LiDAR, as we saw, as I mentioned earlier previously, and also this like hyperspectral data covering different wavelength range about visible near infrared and also about the longer wavelengths like short wave infrared region that's more sensitive for the water stress, thermal camera, and of course we will need like a GPS, INS navigation system to georeference the data. And we can put these cameras on like UAV platform and also on like this, we call this Pheno rover. This is a robotic we designed when I doing my PhD. So we mount all these different sensors on this boom, as you see here, and then they can collect all this data together and then use the central GPS to georeference all these different types of data. Today's presentation is mainly about using the hyperspectral data for alfalfa yield prediction. So I want to talk more about the hyperspectral data. Hyperspectral data is different with the RGB, traditional RGB data. I think you may already know this. The hyperspectral data can give us hundreds of spectral bands, unlike the RGB, which only has 3 color bands. One side, it can give us, it has advantages in the spectral domain, but hyperspectral data, unlike the RGB, which is a frame camera, hyperspectral is typically a push broom camera, so it scans the scene, your area, line by line. So each time you have only one line of data, then you stack them together so you can see some pictures like this. Then a downside of this is the georeferencing. So it's very difficult to georeference the hyperspectral data. Like for RGB, you can probably deploy some ground control points on the field and then use those ground control points, measure the GPS survey those points using the GPS and then correct the geometric arrows to correct your UAV imagery. However, we cannot really do that because each time it only scans one line of image instead of a frame. What we can do is alternatively, we can mount a high resolution, high performance GNSS, INS navigation system right attached to the camera, and then using this position and attitude information to provide these geolocations for the camera images we collected, and then use that to georeference our data. So here is an example, like you see these distortions. This is a regional hyperspectral image we collected over a sorghum field, and then we export this GPS INS location system, latitude, longitude, and also the 3-angle raw pitch yaw attitude information. And then we use this information to correct the geometric arrows. And here is an image after the auto rectification. So we see all these distortions are corrected. And this is only one pass of the entire field. For the UAV to cover the whole field, you have to fly back and forth. You have multiple paths, and then you can do the image stitching. Finally, you can get a mosaic image over the entire sorghum field. So today it's about alfalfa, and I want to firstly give a little bit background about alfalfa and why we work on alfalfa. So alfalfa is a valuable forage crop with relative high yield and nutritional value. It's widely used feedstock for the dairy cows. So in Wisconsin, we are very well known for the dairy, and then this is alfalfa is an important feedstock for dairy cows. So that's why we choose to do this topic. And then alfalfa, unlike other crops, corn and soybeans, which only harvest one time during the growing season, alfalfa has multiple harvests within the summer. So they tend to, usually we starting from the June until September, the alfalfa will harvest monthly. One in June, July, August and one have in September. So they have like 4 weeks, about 4 or 5 weeks growth period. And then we use a series of machinery operations, agricultural machines to harvest and manage this alfalfa. Then the machinery, because they are like very pretty heavy machines, so when we apply such machines on the alfalfa field, then machinery is typically can cause some effect to the alfalfa growth and also the soil compaction. So we want to see whether we can use hyperspectral imagery, because it's very sensitive to the crop status, whether we can use hyperspectral data to detect such stress and help manage the harvesting, optimize the harvest management. So here are the advanced agriculture machines we used in the field for the harvest process. So the harvest process, it involves several steps. Starting from like the mowing, we firstly cut all this alfalfa grass, and then raking. We also need to dry the alfalfa. We need to wait for a couple of days before we collect all this alfalfa from the field. Then we want to rake this so we can have the alfalfa at the bottom top part and flip this, and then we can dry the bottom part. And then this is called a raking process. And also at the end, we need to baling to have such bales. Then we can transport these bales and use them as the feedstock. That's the, it involves several steps about the whole harvest and transportation process. So all this wheel traffic from these machines has a significant impact on the soil health and the crop production potential. So in this study, we use this UAV-based hyperspectral imagery. As I mentioned earlier, the traditional yield and quality assessment is based on this destructive sampling. You need to go to the field to collect those data by hand. Instead, alternately, we can develop such imaging system and then just fly over our system to collect some alfalfa data to see whether we can develop models for the yield and quality prediction. And that can help assist not only the crop breeding, but also about the precision agriculture management to help growers and producers to optimize the harvest process and also optimize the farm inputs like the water, nitrogen, all these farm resources. This is our imaging system we used in this work. So this is the DJI M600 drone platform. And then here is a gimbal used to stabilize the camera. And here is the hyperspectral camera we used. On board about the camera, we have this GNSS-INS system to provide us the location and attitude about our camera. We use this for the data georeferencing. So we have 3 objectives for this work. First, we want to investigate the potential of using hyperspectral images for alfalfa yield prediction. We want to see whether hyperspectral data can be used, can be beneficial, useful for yield prediction. Second, we can develop different kinds of models for the yield prediction, starting from the easy regression models or even a linear model. But in this work, we found that an ensemble learning model really can help improve the prediction performance. So we want to establish an ensemble learning model to see if it has advantages over other single learning regression models. Also, we evaluate the model adaptability under different machinery compaction treatments. So here is our study area. The study area is located in Wisconsin. It's in the Arlington Agriculture Research Station and pretty close to Madison, where our university locates in. It's about half-hour driving from Madison to the research station. And here are 2 alfalfa fields, and we collect the data from both fields. One is field, here are the field numbers, and then we combine the data from the 2 fields. And in this fields, we applied 7 different levels of machinery traffic treatments, and then we have 3 replications for each. Here are the machinery traffic treatments we applied to the previously the Alfalfa plots. We collect this data in last year, 2019. So here are the 7 treatments. For treatment 7, it's a control group. It's just a 0 pass, which means we don't apply any machinery traffic there. So suppose it has the least effects, negative effects, because we don't apply any traffic treatment. And then for others, we can have like 1 pass treatment, 3 pass treatment. We use this, apply 3, we apply the machinery 3 passes over the alfalfa field, 1 pass over the alfalfa field. As you can imagine, the more passes we apply, the more severity it would cause to the alfalfa field, right? It would affect more about the alfalfa growth. Here are the different treatments. And here is about different, here is about details about the UAV platform and the hyperspectral camera. We use this UAV M600 model. It's right now it's a widely used, it's pretty stable, and it's a widely used UAV platform, and different sensors have been mounted on this UAV platform. This is our hyperspectral camera. It's from Hadwell, and the headquarters is in Boston, US. And in total, we have 273 spectral bands, and the spectral wavelength ranges from 400 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. And as I said, it's a line camera, so each line, it has 60 and 640 pixels. So the spatial domain, it's like, in this one line, we have 640 pixels. And we conducted 2 flights last year. One is in July 25th, one is in August 19th. So we, in total, alfalfa was harvested multiple times in the growing season. In total, we had 4 harvests last year, but we collected 2 flights. It's like 2 weeks before the monthly harvest. Say we collect the data in this time, then the actual harvest happening in early August. Then after harvest, the plant, the crops regrows again, and then we fly over again in this time, and then another harvest happened in early September. So we combine the data, these 2 stacked all these data points together to increase the total number of training samples for us for the model development. But we precisely control that all the image we collect is about 2 weeks before the harvest. It means, so we can actually, because we collect this data 2 weeks before the harvest, then it means we can really forecast the yield before the harvest. Right now, we can only know the yield if we either go to the field to collect the data, or we can use a combined harvester to do the harvesting, and they have the yield monitor on the machinery. They can collect the yield data during the harvest. But all those data cannot be used for the decision making, because you only get the data during the harvest time, at the harvest time. But for the UAV, you can actually collect the data before the harvest time and then do the forecasting. This can be very, very helpful, because the growers would be able to know the yield before they harvest the yield. Then they can make the correct harvesting management decisions. And then we fly the UAV like 40 meters above the ground, and the flying speed is 5 meters per second. The GSD is about the ground spatial resolution. It's about 2.5 centimeters, pretty high spatial resolution. Here it's the Flypass. For applying the UAV to conduct the UAV mission, you have to set up your flight path, and we use this DGS software to set the flight path. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flight passes to cover our study area. And in setting up this mission, you can control about the flying speed, flying height, and main point. couple of things you need to consider when you set up this Flypass. First of all, the main limitation right now for the UAV application is about the battery life. So for the battery, we can only collect about 20 to 25 minutes of data. You really need to control that within that range, otherwise the plane will just crash. So then if you cover, think about if you cover a large area, you have to fly faster so you can cover the entire area. Otherwise, you wouldn't have enough battery, or you have to change the battery during the flight mission. Usually, we don't want to do that. So it's really a trade-off of the speed and height. Also, if you fly higher, you can cover larger area within each pixel, so you don't have to fly so many passes. However, then you would get a much lower resolution. So lots of different factors need to be taken into account when you set up this Flypass. And then we use another software. Comes from the vendor, camera vendor. So we are interested in this area, then we can upload this polygon into the software so that we only collect data when the plane, aircraft, and the UAV enter this polygon. We don't need to collect data during for example, during the takeoff and the landing time. Typically, those data are just useless. And here, how we set up our system. This is our Zhou, and this is our camera. The camera is connected with a laptop using this internet. Then we can upload the polygon and give the flighting parameters, upload the parameters to the camera through this one software on this laptop. And hyperspectral data, we know that we need to do not the geometric correction, but also the radiometric calibration. That's the two typical processing operations before you do really any scientific analysis. So we deploy these radiometric calibration TARPs. These TARPs are just the special TARPs. They have a pretty consistent spectral reflectance. So let's say if you the sunlight changes every day, but you want to correct those changes, what we can do is we can use this calibration TARPs to calibrate our spectral, so we can get like more consistent spectrum over different days. And here is about the geometric correction. So we can also rectify the data using the GNSS INS navigation data, and also we can stitch the imagery. As you see here, we have multiple flight paths, then we overlay these flight paths and then stitch the imagery. We need to set up some overlapping across these flight paths so we wouldn't have gaps when you stitch the imagery. Usually the overlapping rate is set up above 30% to make sure you won't have any gaps during the data collection. Okay, the radial calibration is firstly, we convert the data from the digital number. The camera gives you the digital number to radians. Then we need to do, this step is like a linear conversion, and all the calibration parameters usually are provided by the vendor. Similar to we do the satellite analysis, like Landsat and MODIS, those data, usually you have these different levels of data, then they either the raw data and the data after the calibration. This is similar to that. And then we can use these radians, convert these radians to reflectance. Then we use these three calibration panels. They have a different reflectivity. So the brighter has higher reflectivity and the darker panel has lower reflectivity. But they are really very uniform. The reflectance collected from these TARPs, they are well calibrated. So they have pretty uniform reflectance. So we can trust their reflectance values to calibrate our data. The next thing we need to do is we only extract the plot level data. So you cover the entire field, but you apply the compaction to different plots. We need to extract the plot level data. Here it's a zoom in picture about what the plot looks like. Then to extract the plot level data, we firstly need to define this spatial boundary for each plot. We need to know where is this plot. Usually the field person, the agronomy person who planted this field, they know the plot boundary. You can ask from them for this boundary, then you can create these shape files. Then you can use some like ArcMap software to extract the plot level data. After extracting the plot level data, as you see from within each plot, you see not only the vegetation, but also some shadows, soils. You don't want those pixels to affect your analysis, then you have to exclude those pixels. Then you can use the some easy strategies like the NDVI, or even just looking at the NIR bands, the values, to set up a threshold. Then you can just exclude those pixels with relative, for example, lower NDVI values. Then you can only leave the plants canopy for the for your analysis. Then that's all about the pre-processing. After pre-process the data, you will get this nice hyperspectrum over different plots. So we first of all want to see whether we can detect the plant stress according to the compaction from our hyperspectral data. So T7 is the control group, which does not have any compaction applied. Then as you see T7, the blue line always have the relative higher reflectance values in the NIR, because NIR represents the healthy status of the plants. Then higher NIR means more healthier, and the lower NIR values, when the chlorophyll content reduced, your reflectance values just decrease in the NIR region. So if for some groups, we don't see the difference quite much, because like for T1, we only apply one pass. It may not cause that much effect to the crop. And then T2 is 3 passes, and the T3 is 5 passes. So as you can see, the more passes we apply, like the more difference between the control group and your compaction group. And then T6 is the compaction, is the most severe compaction. Then from this figure comparison, we can see it has the largest difference in this NIR region with the control group. So it means our hyperspectral data can really detect the plant stress. Then with this in mind, we can develop models to estimate the yield. In this study, to develop model, we firstly need to extract the features. In this study, we extracted 80 published available hyperspectral indices. Some of them involves like all these different NDVI versions, involves like 2 bands. Some of them involves more than 2 bands, 3 or 4 bands. So here is the table, the summary of the vegetation indices exploring this study, and we list a reference for each index we use. So if you want to know more details, please check our publication. And then, okay, we can definitely use all the 80 published indices, but due to the limited amount of training label data we have, so we want to firstly do a feature selection to see if we can actually reduce the data dimensionality prior to the model development. So here we explore a recursive feature selection approach. And how does this method work? First of all, you have all these 80 features as input. Then you run an estimator. This estimator can be a random one. You can select it. And for example, like SVR, support vector regression, you can use it as an estimator. And then you can run this regressor estimator to determine the initial feature importance. And then we can remove the feature with the lowest importance score. So you rank all these 80, then so you have the ranking numbers from 1 to the 80s. then you just remove the lowest ranking feature, and then you assign the ranking score according to the removing order. Then you just repeat this process until recursively repeat this process until all the rankings were determined for all the input features. So here is our results. We have this exploration about the 80 features. Then we have the rankings for all these 80 feature index. Then we can develop models based on such ranking. We can decide how many features we want to include and in the model development. Then about the ensemble model development. Unlike the single model, it's which using only a single learner to give you one prediction. Ensemble is you tend to combine the prediction from multiple models and then fuse the results. And then typically ensemble model have been demonstrated to have a better generalization ability for the machine learning. So we train and apply machine learning models independently, and then we can combine each single learner independently. Then we can combine the multiple prediction results. You can either just average the results, or you can assign a particular weight for each prediction. In this study, we use a linear regressor. It means we assign we have a different weight for each model, and then the weights are learned from the training process automatically. In ensemble learning model, there are two things needs to keep in mind to construct your ensemble model. One is called sufficiency, which means your model needs to be accurate so that you can trust all the model, each model you choose. Another is you need to have the diversity. You don't want to all your models pretty similar to each other. Then that you cannot really get any useful information from this ensemble because all your models are just pretty similar. So the sufficiency and the diversity are the two critical things you need to pay attention when you choose the base models. In this study, we choose 3 widely used base models. One is the support vector regression, one is the k-nearest neighbor, and one is the random forest. As you can see, these 3 models, they have pretty different mathematical principles. Like they are just basically different types of approach. We did this on purpose because we want to have the diversity across all these models. This is like a tree model. K-nearest neighbor is just a KN. It's very simple model, and the support vector regression just it's like a maximum margin. You try to maximum the margin about the vectors, support vectors, the training samples. Then so they have different principles, mechanisms in the model itself. Then we can guarantee the diversity across these different models. So here is the model evaluation workflow. We have the data as income, then we separate data, use this cross-validation for 5-fold cross-validation, which means we use 4-fold in each round. We use 4-fold as training and 1-fold as testing, but we guarantee that the testing is never overlapping with the training. So the testing is independent of training. And then we run the whole process 50 times because in each time you can really assign a random seed. If you have a random seed, then your results would be different because you can randomly select which is training, which is testing. To provide a relative trust results, we need to run this whole process multiple times and then average the results. In the training process, we can do the feature selection as we showed before. We use the recursive feature selection method, do the feature selection, and then we construct the ensemble model. Then in the test part, we evaluate our model accuracy. So here is the results about the how our model performs, we firstly look at all these 3 independent models. Here, this is a figure shows the model training accuracy versus the number of features. So if we apply, you see here that for all the 3 independent models, the accuracy tends to increase initially as more number of features are incorporated into the model. And then the performance becomes stable. What does this mean? It means we really don't necessarily need all these 80 features, because even we include a lot, then the accuracy do not change that much. So finally, according to these results, we choose like about here 25 number of features. When all the models, independent models, become stable, the accuracy becomes stable, then we stop at here. This can help reduce the computational load, reduce the number of features. And then we compare our ensemble model with the 3 different independent models, and there are 2 scenarios. One is with using the selected features, 25 features out of the 80. One is using the full features, about 80. And in either case, we see our model performs the best, ensemble model. This is the mean value, and in the parentheses is the standard deviation, because we run the whole process multiple times. Then, so we see our model has higher accuracy than the other models for both the selecting the features and also the ensemble features. As you see here, we may not see a significant difference. You may think, oh, this is like a 0.87, this is only 0.83. Is this the difference significant? So we also ask the question to ourselves, and then we compare the results using the paired sample t-test to evaluate whether the improvement is significant or not. So we compared our ensemble model to each individual model and using the statistical test. And here is the test value. And more importantly, by looking at the p-value results, it's all less than 0.01. So it means the improvement is significant, statistically significant. Okay, and then we show the scatter plots. Here is the predicted yield. Here is the observed yield for all the 4 methods. We have 3 independent model, and this one is the ensemble model. Then from all these methods, what you can see is you can see 2 clusters of yield. One cluster tends to have higher yield, and one cluster has to lower yield. And this exactly match, because in this study we did 2 UAV flights, and which corresponding to 2 harvesting time. And then these 2 clusters exactly match to the 2 harvesting, to the yield collected at the 2 harvest time. So the higher yield is the harvest happened earlier, like in August. The lower yield is the harvesting happened later in September. And this actually really, this is because how the alfalfa itself grows. Throughout the growing season, like although the alfalfa regrows after each harvest, but as you harvest more times, the alfalfa yield just tends to decrease after each harvesting. So we can clearly see the 2 clusters of yield data from this corresponding to the 2 harvesting time. And then we evaluate the experiment results, apply this ensemble model as well as the independent learner to different compaction treatments. We want to see whether our model is more stable across all these different treatments. And the results shows that the independent model may perform well to some of the treatments, but has relatively much lower accuracy in a few treatments. And however, across all the 7 treatments, we can see our ensemble model has all the results are pretty good, and the results is more stable. So here is the about the conclusion and the future work. So first of all, we want to conclude that the selection of VIs is important, And from the selection, we found that some multi-band indices tend to rank more importantly. And this may due to the reason that if you have multi-band in the index, it actually involves more spectral information. And also we found that various narrowband NDVIs are effective, and this is consistent to most of the existing literature. And then another important index is the PIR, and it's indicating the photosynthetic efficiency. It's ranked importantly. And from a model point of view, we found that ensemble model really had advantages over the single models because it can often achieve the better performance than the single model. Also, the sufficiency and diversity are the two major principles in selecting these base models. As a future, we want to develop a model to estimate the quality. In this study, we only estimate the yield, but actually the alfalfa producers care not only the yield, but also the quality. And quality means the chemical nutrients contained in the alfalfa. So we are working on this right now. And also in future for the model development, we need to incorporate some environmental factors like the weather, precipitation over the study area for model development. So that's all for my presentation, and thank you. I welcome any questions coming from you.
Thank you, Zhou. It has been a very interesting presentation. We got a lot of questions to ask you right now.
Oh,
and great. Yeah, let me start with Julian Grossi and asking a question. What is the state of LiDAR stress copy, replant and crop phenotyping? You can also see the questions from the chat box, Zhou.
Oh, let me try to.
What is the state of LiDAR stress copy, replant and crop phenotyping?
I can first stop sharing.
And then he or she continue with the, did you use all data channels for your spatial temporal characterization?
Let me first see. What's the state of the LiDAR?
Yeah.
Replant. Oh, LiDAR. Okay, yeah, LiDAR is mainly used for extracting the heights, the geometric structures in crop phenotyping. It's really widely used right now. Also, the LiDAR sensor price is going lower and lower. So as you see the picture I show in the slides, it's a Velodyne LiDAR. It's only like right now costs about $4,000. So it's much, I would say it's actually much more easily to use than the hyperspectral, because the hyperspectral camera is still very expensive. It's more like the research side. But for LiDAR, it's, yeah, because of the low cost, any people can afford it.
Okay, so Alican Karaca is asking, what about the performances under non-ideal weather conditions? I guess that the magnitudes of the measured spectral signatures can change while scanning the area on a cloudy day.
Right. Usually we tend to avoid those days for the data collection. So if today is cloudy and we may have to collect our data, yes, another day. But the thing is, if it's cloudy, it's uniform clouds, we can correct it using the spectral panels as you see deployed on the ground. But the interesting thing, the challenging thing is actually when you start collecting the data, you don't have cloud, and then during the flight, the clouds just come. And then your image, you will see some part has cloud and some part does not have cloud. And this data is just useless.
Okay. So Julio Torres Tello is asking, are the different indexes related to different phenotype characteristics? How do you know which one is better to assess chlorophyll content or yield, etc.? Is one index like NDVI good for everything?
Yeah, from this study, we don't really necessarily know which one is better for assess chlorophyll content or yield. So we want to let the model to figure out which features are more advantageous than another. So as you see, we firstly ranked all the indexes and from 1 to 80, and then in each time we only add in one feature into the model analysis. After adding we firstly add the most important, the one ranked the first, and then add another, the one ranked the second. In this process, we add when we reach about 25 numbers, we see the model performance do not really change. then we just stop there.
I think the other question is somewhat related to this. Rob Changia, are you using the SVR RFE to select features prior to use consistent feature in SVR, KNN, RF-based models, or using RFE on the individual base models to potentially use different features?
Yes, you are right. We're using the SVR RFE to first select the features. And then after the feature selection, we apply the 3 models on the selected features.
Okay, while we're talking about this, I want to ask a question, something related to this. So you're using SVR RFE to select the features, but in each time, as much as I know, when you change the training set, the ranking is also changing. So how do you, handle, what would you say about the robustness of the features on the performance of the model?
Yes, we did observe that. So we run the results like 50 times. Then I think we average the results, the ranking results, and then we can assign a ranking number.
Have you also, focused on the first 10 parts or first 20 parts, or because is it changing a lot? The ranking, or?
It's not really changed too much. I didn't show this, but in the paper, actually in the appendix, we have a figure shows about the ranking distribution. From that figure, we can see, for example, this time this feature ranked the first. Next time this feature may not rank the first, but it's still relative rank in the top 5. So we check the ranking distribution.
It's in the you're already using the 25 features.
Yeah, it's already in the,
okay. So Gihan Zayan Astoi asking, after extracting the in situ plots positions, do you then calculate the mean value of each vegetation index or use other statistics, max, mean, for example, to create the model?
Right now, we only use the mean, but I appreciate this comment, and I think we need to also investigate the variance within those pixels.
Okay, so Guillaume, I think he's asking again, or she is. Sorry, it's not clear to me when the hyperspectral data are collected at a specific time before harvesting at different times temporal series.
In this study, we collect the hyperspectral data 2 weeks before the harvest.
Okay.
And then, of course, you can collect the data more frequently. But yeah, it's a trade-off, right? It means you still have to send people to the field to fly the drone. So yeah, but I think this summer we collect more data. So we tend to collect weekly data. So we can combine the time series data for the model development.
Brian is asking, related to Julia's question about which of the many listed vegetation indices ended up being used in the Ensemble Learning, figure 5, all of them, just the narrow band NDVIs?
No, actually it's a pretty mix of different, the narrow band NDVI are selected, but we also see some others. I think here it's ranking about the, Here is a ranking about our rankings. I think this is from one run, but at the end it's pretty similar to this result. As you can see in the 20 top 5, we have like a pretty.
So we cannot see your screen. Yeah.
Yeah, Zhou, I think you clarified that though earlier, that you count maximum performance saturation at about 25 indices, correct?
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. Yep, okay. So thank you. Appreciate it.
She did.
Okay, any more questions?
Okay, we do have more questions. So they're saying, thank you for interesting presentation. Thank you. And then what is the georeferencing accuracy after auto rectification? Do you need to co-register multiple acquisitions? That's the question.
Georeferencing accuracy, it's not very ideal right now. It's within ½ meter, I think. And then, yeah, if we have multiple acquisitions, we don't necessarily need to co-register them because the shapefile it's there. We just extract data using the shapefile for different dates. But in the future, we would like to do a better job in terms of the georeferencing accuracy to so that we can automatically using one shapefiles to extract data for all the dates. But that requires some higher resolution GPS IMU, and it involves higher cost.
Adrian is asking, did you try XGBoost or Light GBM?
XBoost? Yeah, we tried XBoost. It doesn't perform better than a random forest. What's the other question?
Light GBM. So the same question, XGBoost or Light GBM.
Yeah, is it boosting algorithm? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like a boosting algorithm. Yeah, it doesn't really better than the bagging algorithm, random forest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so any question left? Did you try to compare NDVI values from drone with Sentinel-2? This is from Adrian Cole.
We cannot really use Sentinel-2. Sentinel-2 gives you only like 20 or 20 meters. That's 2 cores. Our plot is within 3 meters.
Okay, so you already talked about this, but still asking, they are saying that you delivered excellent presentation. Congratulations. My question is, what are the major difficulties faced during hyperspectral image acquisitions? That's the question from Paresh.
The major difficulty, I think, is still the georeferencing part. The hyperspectral is push broom. It's very difficult to be georeferenced, right?
Okay. Could you explain the features? You mean plant characteristics or indices? Hussein Jomart Kurt.
It's indices. It's indices. Vegetation
yeah. How are the 3 models weighted in the ensemble? Yes, KNN, RFN.
Yeah, it's in our case, we assign the weight automatically. We learn this weight from the training process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that's all, but if there are any other questions, so you can ask just by unmute yourself. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question to our presenter? Okay, all right. I think, yes, they're all saying thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, we appreciate our speaker, Dr. Zhou, for her great contribution today. Thank you to the audience for joining this webinar. Just one last reminder, we will have our second webinar on the 8th of December, which will be given by Dr. Daya Sagar, who's an IEEE GRSS Distinguished Lecturer. And he will be talking about research on development of mathematical morphology-based algorithms for geoscience, remote sensing, and geospatial data science. You'll be notified by IEEE GRSS and also by our social media accounts before the webinar starts. So I hope we would get together soon on this webinar activity. So thank you very much again. So I think today we are going to close this webinar. Thank you again for everything. Thank you, Zhou.
Okay, thank you. See you.
Thank you. See you. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.